What's going on, everyone? It's Ozzy from OzTalksHW, and within the last 2 years, RGB has essentially infected every computer component out there. It started off with simple case fans, but it's quickly expanded into almost every single computer component out there, especially the main ones such as motherboards, RAM, and CPU coolers. In one regard, this is giving computer builders more customization options for their gaming setups. Just head over to the subreddit Battle Stations and I can guarantee you that the majority of the top posts will have setups where at least half of the components have some kind of RGB capability. Well, today I bring you guys a SATA 3 RGB SSD from Teamgroup. Now this sounds very odd and it's definitely very extra, but when Teamgroup offered to send one over for an overview/review, I decided to give it a shot. And it's not the first RGB SSD to hit the market, but it definitely has the largest luminous area and it is the brightest according to Teamgroup. This SSD is a part of their Delta lineup and it comes in 3 different variants: the Delta S, and the Delta X. The differences between the models correspond to their light control source for RGB functionality. The Delta uses a 5-volt add header cable. The Delta S uses a more standard 12-volt RGB header, and the Delta X, weirdly enough, uses an even more standard USB 10-pin header cable. It's kind of odd, yes, I understand that, but it also gives people with very basic motherboards the ability to use the RGB functionality on the SSDs. So I really appreciate that Teamgroup is doing this because they're trickling down RGB functionality, which was really meant for more mid-range to high-end boards, to even the cheapest of the budget segment. The Delta model comes in 3 different storage sizes: 1 terabyte, 500 gigs, and 250 gigs, with MSRPs of $262, $149, and $86 respectively. The 250 gigabyte version I have here comes with the SSD itself, a manual that walks you through the installation, stickers, a warranty, and the 5-volt RGB add header cable that you can connect with the motherboard. Take note that while the SSD will work with essentially any motherboard with SATA connections, the RGB functionality only works with motherboards that utilize one of these headers listed previously, respective to the model that you have. Personally, I think the SSD looks pretty good without the RGB functionality enabled. A lot of drives in this price range, like your 860 EVOs and Pros, have a very sleek design, but Teamgroup added a bit more personality to this specific drive. It has a very clean, black, armor-esque gamer look, but it doesn't look too cheesy or too tacky. I think it pulls it off pretty well. It's a tiny bit thicker than your standard drives, but the same length and width. And it's a tiny bit heavier as well, which is generally a good sign. It means that Teamgroup probably used higher quality components when it comes to the construction of this thing. With that being said, the 3-year warranty is a little bit lower than a lot of standard drives out there now. You can get an 860 EVO or Pro, and those come with at least 5-year limited warranties. RGB aside, the Delta performs pretty well in standard sequential read and write, but in the 4 kilobyte test bench, it really falls flat on its face compared to the other SSDs on the list. Firmware updates and driver efficiency can really play a part here, but I asked Teamgroup if there's any software needed for the SSDs, and they stated that there wasn't. This is the worst case scenario testing, but it definitely sheds light on the differences between top tier SSDs and the cheaper models, and it kind of looks like the Delta might fall into the cheaper category. The RGB design looks very nice, and although it's kind of gimmicky and a little bit unneeded and extra, it's one of those things that I didn't realize that I wanted to see until I knew that it was something that was actually plausible that companies were making. Teamgroup also stated that the Northern Lights were their biggest influence when it came to the Delta series, and that's pretty obvious once you view the default mode of fading through the colors in the color spectrum. And because the Delta model is connected directly to your motherboard, it can be synced and controlled using your motherboard's lighting RGB software, if applicable, of course. The Delta series SSDs are solid drives. For dedicated transfers such as copying large files, they rival even higher end SATA 3 SSDs, but when it comes to general snappiness, they definitely lag behind. This begs the question, did Teamgroup really sacrifice form over function here? And I definitely think that does play a little bit of a role. We've seen this same thing happen when it came to RGB translating itself over to PC cases the last year and a half. A lot of computer cases lacked a lot of functionality because they sacrificed that in turn for something that looks a little bit prettier. I won't name names, but there are definitely cases that come to mind when I think about that. Yeah, I'm looking at you, but Phoenix. At an MSRP of $86 for the 250 gigabyte version, it's not a bad purchase. If you're a casual gamer, even if you're a more dedicated gamer slash streamer, pushing the boundaries towards competitive, you won't notice a difference between this drive and a Samsung Evo or Pro. Otherwise, I recommend spending the extra $10 and getting an SSD that has better 4K transfer speeds, such as a Samsung Evo or Pro. And as a matter of fact, as of recording this video, I don't even think the price difference is that big. SSD prices are dropping a lot, the Evo and the Pro included, and I actually think they're under the MSRP of the Delta right now. But you know what they say, it ain't for me unless it's RGB. That was so bad. That should be on a cringe compilation, man. But thank you guys for watching. If you liked this video, then leave a like. And if you loved it, share and subscribe and all of that stuff. RGB has literally infected every single piece of component that we know of now. I actually just ordered an RGB power supply because I have something in the works, and it includes that power supply and this SSD. Let me know if you can guess it. Till next time, I'll see you guys in the next one. I said next twice. Anyway, peace.